to this joint OGC and ISO TC211 seminar on celebrating gender in geospatial standardization. My name is Agneta Engberg, and I am the chair of ISO TC211 on geospatial on geographic information geomatics. That's the name. So just a very short introduction before we get started. As you all, I think, can agree on, geospatial applications are, as we know, increasingly being used across many domains and industries and affecting our everyday life. So this would not be possible without standards. And I believe that participation in standardization should reflect the society as a whole, whatever the topic of the standardization is. Another way of saying that could be that diversity matters, and both when it comes to achieving results, but also for the general well-being, I believe. So speaking for ISO TC211, I would like to encourage women to participate in committee work, both in leading roles and in expert roles. And ISO TC211 also aims at a well-balanced participation from both the global society, but also from the gender perspective. So then next slide, please, Christine. Just some practical things before we get started with the presentations. Please use the chat for any questions for the presenters, and we will try to address at least some of these given the time we have. Please also mute your microphone and turn off your video unless you are speaking. And this seminar is recorded. So next slide, please, Christine. And I am then honored to present the program for today. Also, so I do not forget it, I would like to present Ms. Christine Allansson from the Swedish Institute of Standards, and which is the organization behind the ISO TC211 Secretariat. So today we have some really inspiring speakers, and we will talk about different perspectives, different experiences, and different motivations. But it's all on the topic of geospatial, of standardization, and of gender. So then to actually go to the next slide, please, Christine. I would like to start by introducing Dr. Nadine Alamay, who is the CEO of Open Geospatial Consortium, OGC, which also is an organization with a long-standing relationship to ISO TC211. And please, Nadine, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Agneta. Can I share my screen now?
Yeah,
Thank you. All right. Here comes the hardest part of the whole day, sharing the presentation. All right, can you confirm you can see the presentation?
Yes.
Super. So I have 10 minutes. I want to thank Agneta again for her leadership on this essentially session on standards and women and geospatial. So I'm very, very excited to be here. And this is truly a one-of-a-kind event. I mean, we collaborate, OGC and ISO collaborate on so many technically heavy topics, but this topic is so close to my heart, and everything that Agneta said about diversity, you know, goes for OGC as well. So thanks again, really, for organizing it. And I'm really honored and happy to be with the other ladies on this, you know, on this session. So I wanted to use my time to answer this question that honestly my friends ask me sometimes, which is, do you really work in standards? And you know, you see my face, they go like, oh, standards, are you sure? And I'm here to say with big capital letters, yes. And let me tell you why. I not only love working with standards, but I think you should consider it too. So in terms of quick background, I have a bachelor degree in computer and communication engineering from the American University of Beirut, Lebanon. And I was selected what feels like ages and ages ago now for an MIT scholarship to study this thing called GIS. And I had no clue what GIS was. I knew what MIT was, so I said, who says no? I packed my bags and just went on that journey. And little did I know that GIS is going to change my world. It allowed me to connect to all sorts of departments and people while at MIT. GIS showed me the power of geospatial during the 9/11 rescue efforts, where everything we were working on and researching at MIT just came to life at a critical moment here in the United States. GIS led me to NASA, supporting the Earth Sciences Application Division, where we were trying to share Earth observation data with every scientist and every user in the world to make the data findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable. And then in 2014, I decided to try something totally new, and I started a small business in aviation. It was a business in aviation information exchange. And guess what? It also turned out to be all about geospatial. Because airport maps or airspace configurations or flight plans or flight path or weather forecasting, it's all geospatial. So everywhere I looked, it was geospatial. So very naturally, I gravitated towards the Open Geospatial Consortium, OGC. So I'm very happy to be the CEO of OGC now for 2 years, and the first woman CEO for this organization that's about 27 years old. So it's a great honor, and it's definitely a turning point, I think, for women, for diversity, for geospatial in general. And I really hope the people on the Zoom call have heard of OGC, at least our standards for data access, discovery, modeling, sharing, visualizing, and the like. And now, by the way, this is exactly the part where my friends would go, yeah, we know, we get standards, but like you have so much energy and you keep talking about innovation. So how, Nadine, how? Aren't standards like boring? And this is when I'm like, are you kidding me? Maybe you don't know what I really do. So let me tell you what we actually do, at OGC. So I'm working, for example, we're working, right, with the likes of Apple on brand new indoor mapping standards, so anybody can navigate warehouses, malls, airports. I'm working with the likes of Google and Amazon Web Services on cloud computing for Earth observation. So we're also working with the likes of NASA, Maxar, and so many startups in space, in the space domain, on this data from space, the new space. Oh, I'm also working on Internet of Things, right? Everything mobile, your phone, my phone, the Alexas, the self-driving cars, the drones, anything. It's the Internet of Things. And I hope also, have you heard of smart cities or urban digital twins? Guess what? It's all geospatial, because you're trying to connect concepts and data in space and time so that you can make informed decisions from many departments, many organizations, many domains. That's geospatial. Working on 3D streaming standards, on new gaming and simulation standards. And by the way, my kids love me for this one, because if you know Epic Games, the organization, the business behind Fortnite, the video game, they joined OGC last month. So my kids, I have 2 boys, they think I'm a hero. They don't care about anybody else at OGC, but like Fortnite, Epic Games, right? So isn't this amazing? And I'm working on packaging the data again for the mobile and disconnected environments, and on brand new ways, right, to access and share location information with anyone, by anyone, even the non-geospatial geeks. And then, can I tell you also that this exposes me to applications in agriculture, right, with the sensors, with the science. Speaking of science, environmental data. We get to work in marine spatial data infrastructures, connections of land and water, health, because who hasn't heard of COVID in 2020, 2021? And in a very weird way, we work on disasters, because disasters happen somewhere, and location matters, and time, by the way, location and time matters for disaster response, preparedness, mitigation. So we do it all with standards that connect information based on space and time. And so what's really interesting, I get exposed to all of this, the technologies and the domains and the organizations, probably in a single week, if not in a single day. So no, it's not boring at all. I think it's the total opposite. I am part of a community, right, that is truly shaping the future of location, and we're making a positive impact on the world. And the standards we're working on are evolving, just like the world we live in. And also the way we develop and validate standards is also evolving. And I'm happy to hear Linda talk, after me about, some of these new standards. And so why I love it, with standards, we're connecting systems and organizations and peoples and sometimes country. Ooh, but my favorite part, I just said it, we get to meet the people, the most amazing experts from all over the world, all over walks of life, seriously. And this webinar is, I think, a great example of the diversity of backgrounds that you encounter in the geospatial community. So yes, standards help us connect the world. And you know who's really good at connecting? I have to say this, women. We are natural leaders. We are natural consensus builders. We're natural connectors. So I will say, yes, let's do it, ladies. Together, I think we are slowly but surely changing the world and adding diversity to these standards that connect the world. And with that, I just want to say again, happy Women's Month, day, and every day. And thank you so much, Agneta, for putting this event together so that we can share this message and this passion with the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wow, Nadine, you really make standardization seem exciting, and really a good ambassador. If I've ever seen a good ambassador. Thank you. I see no specific questions. I was wondering, Nadine, you mentioned yesterday at the meeting, I was at your meeting, you have increased the number of female participants in some part of your organization. I think it was the board. Is there any special thing concerning specifically OGC you would like to promote or recommend women to have an extra, keep an eye out for some special groups, or is it's just general?
It's really general, because you can see it's not a shortage of topics, right? If you're in any domain, it's engineering and science and applications, and it's technical or it's a community driven. So I think it was just an overall call for more engagement from women representatives, just like we said earlier, Agneta, with in committees or in events. And I know they're out there, so it was just a call to encourage them to essentially come join us and be engaged. If we don't nurture the new generation, we're not going to get the leaders in 5 and 10 years. That's what I'm trying to do.
Thank you very much again, Nadine, for empowering us here and for for making standardization seem as exciting as it is. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Moving on then in the agenda to make room for the next presenter, Dr. Linde van der Brink, from UNOVM in Netherlands, a standardization expert, and from what I understand, also co-chairing and chairing lots of things in the standardization world. So very welcome to you as well, Linde, and please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. By the way, I agree with Nadine that standards making is a very cool job. So I'm Linda, and I'm working very hard to bring about the next generation of standards in geospatial. Next slide. I work at UNOVM. This is a Dutch government-funded organization. It's existed since 2007. I always say it's a national geospatial standards body in the Netherlands. And we try to allow the government to work better with geospatial information. So making it easy for them, but also for other users to find and use this geospatial information. And we create and promote standards in order for that all to work. So that's why I'm working there as a standards expert. Currently, by the way, we have 41 people I asked yesterday, and 18 of those are women. So I think it's pretty good for a pretty technical sector. Next slide. So I've been going to OGC meetings since 2009. And this is not an actual picture of the very first day I was there, but this is mostly what it looks like. This is an actual OGC meeting photograph. So the first time I came to OGC, I was told to go to the GML working group, and GML is a hardcore geo standard. So it was the very first meeting on Monday morning, and I was sitting there in the room with basically a bunch of old white guys, and to my eyes, they sort of looked like Santa Claus or something like that. So it was already a bit intimidating, but then they started arguing very heavily about some detail that I didn't understand. So it was a very, very intimidating start, I would say. But I hung in there, and in fact, I found my way around the OGC pretty well, and a lot of the members were very welcoming as well. So that helped me a lot to get used to that. But there were a lot of men there. So I'm talking about 12 years ago. I think it's a bit better now, but still, I sometimes sit in meetings like this where I'm the only woman. Next slide. Yes. So I've done a lot of things at OGC over the years, but one geospatial standards effort I really see myself as having influenced is the spatial data on the web work, the love story of Mother Earth and web standards, as you can see. So I was already seeing in my work in the Netherlands that web standards had a lot to offer. So I became part of the effort to create geospatial standards based on web standards. And this work was done jointly with the W3C. So there was a lot of connecting to be done, connecting people working in different standards organizations. And this group, interestingly, was led by one man and one woman. So Ed Parsons and Carrie Taylor were the chairs. And myself and Jeremy Tandy were the editors of one of the main documents that came out of that. Yeah, we managed to work together and create in that group something that spurred a change in geospatial standards, more lightweight, user-friendly standards, and also a more agile, organic way of creating them. Next slide. So this is one of the documents that came out of it, the one I edited with Jeremy. So this spatial data on the web best practices document describes how general web architecture and general web standards can be applied to publishing spatial data. And this is all based on examples in the wild, as we called it. So examples of where these standards were already being used in practice. So we didn't invent anything. We only described what we found and what was working. Yeah, so it deals with linked geospatial data, the publication formats for spatial data on the web, APIs, metadata, geometries on the web, coordinate systems, and so on. I'm pretty happy with this document. Next slide. So the cool thing about it is that not only the document itself, but the fact that it had a big influence on the evolution of OGC standards. So there's a whole new generation of OGC standards being born as we speak, where before they were based on old way of working with SOAP and XML-based stuff. It's now all with the influence of these general web standards. It's all being recreated as RESTful web-based APIs or JSON-based encodings, and linked data is getting its place in there, and so on. So it's becoming much more generally usable also for people outside of the geospatial community. Next slide. So the OGC recognized my work, even though I am a very quiet person. I mostly stay in the background and work hard, but that was seen. And so here you see me winning the 2019 Gardels Award at OGC. So this is 2 years ago now, I think. So you can see still mostly men, but I count, I think, 7 or 8 women in this picture. So next slide. Yeah, just to reflect a little bit on the topic of women in technical jobs. I believe I'm not successful in this field because of my gender or in spite of it. I think it's not nature, it's not nurture either. I think I'm here because of the choices I made. So I'm a person that always chooses to do the things that interest me. So I studied literary science. That's why you see a lot of books on this picture. So nothing remotely to do with geospatial or anything like that. And my own choice made me become a programmer because I always loved computers. My dad was an early adopter of home computers. And during my studies, I researched how to use computers to analyze literature. So I got a job in IT, and then yeah, I got in touch with people working on geospatial IT and geospatial standards. And that really interested me. So that's why I now work as a geospatial standards expert. Just because I really love standards work, both the technical and the social aspects of it. Next slide. So this is one of my heroes. I have to mention her, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the first female superhero on television. So this series was one of the things that made me realize that women can do anything, basically. But life is full of these moments where you can choose to do something else than what your gender, your culture, your convention or upbringing dictates. The only thing is you have to realize that you have that choice. You're not fixed to your gender or to anything else. It may hold you back, but it can't keep you in place. Next slide. So just to prove my my point, what do these women have in common? They have all won extremely long foot races. So I'm talking here about the woman on the left did a 268-mile race and won it. I think while breastfeeding her child as well. I'm not sure about that. But the point is, these women can actually beat men at these long distances, and they can do this because they choose to, because they believe that they can, or they are not afraid to do things that maybe they cannot do, and they find out. And not only because they can endure physically, but they are mentally strong, because otherwise there's no way you can do this. And that's also something that helps with creating standards, by the way. So yeah, what I would say is there's always a moment between stimulus and response where you can choose your action, and therefore you can choose your life. And everyone has the responsibility to themselves to do this. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Sorry, there was the mute button. Thank you, Linda. Wow, another inspiring talk. Yeah, I love this. You said about you sort of own your choices, and also I think that's important. Also, to have role models or superheroes. Wow,
Yeah.
amazing. I was actually going to ask you about your background. I know you mentioned the literary science, but I think you've already told us how that about your background and how that impacted or did not impact your work. It was basically your choice that was I guess, the main driver here. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got some applauses here in the chat. So thank you. Thank you again. So then I suggest we proceed with the next speaker, which is Miss Karin Lindmark, a section manager from the Swedish Institute of Standards, SIS, and who is responsible for the ISO, part of the ISO work, at least on gender responsive standards. So very welcome to you, Karin, and maybe you please correct me and tell me exactly what you do. Welcome, the floor is yours. Yeah. And you need to...
I need to unmute just myself, sorry, I forgot that. I turned my video on, but I forgot the unmute button. Thank you, Agneta, very much. I think you did a correct introduction. I work at the standardization department at SIS, and I work with service development and technical issues. But I also have an assignment that I will tell you a little bit more about at the ISO level that has to do with gender responsive standards. So thank you for asking me to join this meeting. It is an honor, but it's also a privilege, I think, to join this type of meetings, because when you listen to colleagues, female and male, I think it's inspiring, and it always gives you new ideas, and me especially. I mean, when you hear people talking warmly or enthusiastically about standards and gender issues, it gives you more fire to keep working on these issues because they are important. So today I will try to explain why I think this is important, and the gender responsive standards and what we are trying to do about it. This is, of course, from my own personal assignment at ISO. And then I will end this little speech by giving some more general observations and reflections. So if you please, Christine, change to the next picture. Thank you. When we talk about standards, we assume that they are created for all. And is this really the case? And if not, why does it matter? And I will try to give you some examples. Tech products, they are usually created by male engineers and developers. I wear this, I don't know if you can see it, but I wear this wearable, it's a smartwatch. I like it very much, but I don't think it was designed for a woman or by women, because we might have wanted it smaller or chicer or whatever. So is it really designed for my needs and preferences, my needs as a woman? And when you look into the medicine sector, when you decide on the best suitable medication, do you really consider size, body fat, and food habits and preferences? Because we know that those parameters vary if you are a male or female, or if you are big or small. And there are men and women of different sizes and strengths. Can they all grip the tools we have standardized? Can they all use the protective equipment we standardized? Is this taken into account when writing a standard? So we need to understand that these differences do exist, and we need to understand that implication has on the standards we write. If we, and then I always want to talk about we, because this is not a women issue. This is an us issue for both men and women. If we look at our data with a gender lens, if we have a gender lens when we write a standard, can we meet the needs, and not only the ones that are presented to us or the ones that are sort of natural? With the data, I know that in geographical information, for instance, I mean, you present the data and that is very gender neutral, but what you use the data for would be interesting when you write the standard, when you use that data. Would dividing the facts or the data into male and female, would that give us different answers? How women travel, how men travel, what are our habits? We can and should write standards that are relevant to all. There are so far very few standards in the field of, for instance, feminine hygiene products. This is really strange. I mean, 50% of the world's population is women. So we really need to consider, why are there more standards, or I think there are more standards that are written for men on a general basis. And these are some of the reasons why the work is important to all. It's not only a matter for equal rights and possibilities. I mean, standards usable to everyone is good business. It is really good business for everyone if we have standards that meet everyone's needs. It is important to the entire community. Next, please, Christine. So I just wanted to give you a little information on what's going on right now and what I am involved in. There are a lot of things going on about gender right now. I am so happy that it's not only the 8th of March that we talk about these issues. I mean, we should not have a Women's Day. We should have a gender day throughout the year. But the initiative I'm going to talk about, like many others, is an important eye opener, and it is important for us that we realize this is part of the work. The more we talk about the gender issues, the better. I must also confess that the challenge is that there is so much going on that we risk to lose focus or duplicate work. So that is why I think it's important that we coordinate as best we can. So that is why when I speak to my colleagues in Europe, when I speak to my standardization colleagues, when I come to a meeting like this, I think it's important that we help each other to sort of explain and let each other know of the good initiatives that exist, so that we don't have to invent the wheel one by one. So having said this, on the ISO side, we signed the UNECE Gender Declaration and committed to the ISO Gender Action Plan. It does include 5 different areas, and I will talk about one of those initiatives, the one that I lead, supporting the technical community in writing gender responsive standards. So together with my IEC colleague from Standards Council of Canada, Ms. Lynn Givens, we lead one of the initiatives, and that one is supposed to help ISO achieve its gender action plan. We have a joint advisory group between IEC and ISO, and the mandate of our group is to create the tools that ensure that standards are gender responsive. We have in the group we have gender experts, we have standard developers, we have staff, and we have 10 countries that are trying to develop tools for the entire community to use. We have a lot of ideas and we have a lot of challenges. We started our work about 9 months ago, and we are supposed to deliver the tools and some of the assisting information by the end of this year. One of the things we have done is to send out a survey, and the results are coming in. The results came in a couple of weeks ago, and it is clear. It became clear for the entire group that the biggest challenge is not to work on these issues, but is to raise the awareness of the full technical community. We did receive some very inspiring input from the feedback from the survey, but we did also receive answers like, we are working on technical products issues. Our products are neither male nor female. Why should we have to work on this subject? Why is this important to us? So we need to raise awareness, not only of, I know that hopefully, I hope that all of you attending this meeting are aware of these, how important these issues are, but we need to get the others along as well. So the ISO community is huge, and it consists of 164 countries. So having realized how different we perceive these questions, it's really important for us to take a small step at a time, so that we will ensure an understanding across cultures and continents. This is why we have to agree to stick to the male and female perspective of gender, even if in some countries gender is a far bigger issue. We are hoping that down the line this may become even more inclusive, but for now we want everyone on board, and therefore we are trying to take it slowly. Our intention is to provide the support and some tools and some ideas that the community can use, can be of helpful checklists, questionnaires, and stuff that will actually help them help the community and help our ambassadors or champions to lead the way by having tools that they can use and move the standardization forward to make it more gender inclusive and make the standards we write more gender inclusive. So by the end of 2021, our goal is to deliver checklists and recommendations also to our governing boards, not only to the technical community, but also to our governing boards on how we can move this gigantic process forward and make changes that will matter to everyone. Yes, please change, Christine. So what I've shared with you so far is the why, and to some extent what we are trying to do about it at the ISO level. But I wanted to take this chance to share some of my personal reflections. I think that, and I did mention it earlier, I think gender is not only important and very personal, but it is also often political. This is something that I have noticed every day in the international context, and how far we have come varies and differs, and we need to be aware and sensitive to this. We need to help each other move along slowly and not tread on toes, and be sensitive to different cultures and different ideas, but still keep pushing this vital area forward. I think I did mention it, but I think that gender is also a greater context. I mean, it's more than male and female. It is truly about inclusiveness. Anyone should be able to use the standard, understand the standard, take part in standard development, and enjoy the benefits of standards. It should not matter if you're male or female or anything else. So it is about inclusiveness, which I think is important to mention. I agree that standardization should be a reflection on society, like Agneta started off by saying, but unless the entire society realizes the importance of gender, we will only come halfway. It is not only for women to understand that this is important, but for all, men and women, and we want to achieve this together. So not only women can make a change, and not all men work against it. So from that perspective, I think we need to, I do agree that we need to have more women involved in standardization, but we need to have the men involved also understanding how they can change things and how they can understand these issues. Another reflection is from our own world, the world of standardization. I'm listening to my colleagues here. I get so excited because they personify the idea that standards and standard development is and can be fun and extremely important. And we need to look at our processes and our methods. And if we want to become truly inclusive and attract women and men, we need to make what we do visible and attractive. We need to talk about what we do, and we need champions. The changes in gender responsiveness happens from within. We need to move and we need to talk about these issues, and we cannot wait for others to change the world for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Karin. Thanks for this interesting talk from the ISO world. Just going back one step, please, Christine, just wait there. We had one question. Also, I would like to comment to you, Karin, that I've heard you speak before, and I think it's really good to really emphasize, like you do in this slide here, that it's standardization is not only about the standards. I mean, the different types of standards, if they're technical or medical or something, it's about the standardization process. This is also included in your, from my understanding, I think this is important as well. So thanks. So we had a question then. Start with, yes, there was one question. Do you have an example of how gender may play a role in one of the OGC standards? I don't know if that was directed the question to Nadine or to Karin. Probably, and Nadine has said something in the chat.
I think
yeah, it's more.
Karen,
yeah,
you can answer it, Karen. But my take on it was, I love what you said. I think it's like the process, your question about standardization or processes attractive to all. And Linda's first meeting when she came in and it was a room of Santa Clauses. I love you, Linda, seriously, it was amazing. So I think it's part of the process, and I'm trying to think if there, I mean, it's a great question. I don't know the answer, but all that comes to my mind personally is sometimes I know, for example, there are issues in the developing world with tracking titles of property that affects way more women than men, and can we standardize something around that? And if the women are not represented in these conversations, you're not going to standardize the pain points. But this is speaking off the top of my head.
Mm.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Nadine. I also think that maybe some of the ODC data is used in other. So I mean, that's not the standards you create, but the data gathered from those standards is used in many other areas. And there, I think I try to explain it by saying that some of the data is not gender divided when you analyze the data, and that makes writing the standards in the next level or at the next level more difficult, because the data is often what we base our assumptions on, and if the data doesn't show the difference in acting or needs or movements of men and women, then the data is not as useful.
Thank you. I see also there are some more conversation going on in the chat about maybe the kind of language we use. Is it an inclusive language or an exclusive language? And so it's all about that. It's all about the process, I think, again. So yeah, the more diversity we have, the more inclusive will be the results. It's thanks for all. Now you're really warmed up, I think, in the conversation here. So, but we need to move on to the next presenter. And before that, I would like to thank you, Karin, again for an interesting presentation and interesting and really thoughtful in many ways. Thank you. Moving on to Zarina Coetzee from University of Pretoria, professor, and I know, Zarina, looking at your Facebook or whatever, I think you are interested in an ever-increasing volumes of geographic information and the challenges of making the information findable, accessible, and usable. So please correct me if anything wrong there, or else you need to update your Facebook or whatever. Please, it's all
Good.
yours, the floor.
Thank you. Let me just share it here. Okay, I think it's visible now. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's really special to be part of this panel today and part of this celebration. So I want to take you on a long walk to an international standard. This was a long walk that I undertook. And as you can see, when you start, you think the road is very smooth and the target is there far away, barely visible. But before we start the story about the walk, let me just also give you some background of where I came from. So I spent my first few weeks at university in the engineering department. And after a few weeks, my parents came to visit and I burst into tears and I said to them, everybody here looks as if they are lying underneath their cars. They are mechanics. This is not me. I can't deal with the engineers. So that's how I ended up in the computer science program, because that was the next best option. And I don't think I've ever regretted that. But then for my sins, I married an engineer. And in my first job, I was part of an all-male software engineering team. This was a very interesting exercise. I don't think they always knew what to do with me. I don't think they were always, well, sometimes they sounded surprised that, you know, a woman can also do some programming and some technical work. And even at my next job at Afrigis, where we looked at data and specifically address data, and that's where I got interested in address data, you know, the directors, the management board, everybody, you know, you were always the only woman in that team. So it was always the same. And then in 2006, I joined the university. And for the first time in my life, I had the opportunity to work with somebody, my supervisor, who was a woman. Judith Bishop, who later went on to become the director of research at Microsoft. And a few years later also, we at the University of Pretoria had, I think, one of the first female vice chancellors at the university. So these were very powerful role models for me and kind of made me relax into my role. We always kind of stood out in the past. Now I realized, you know, other women are also doing the same kind of job and you can do it. And so today also I try to be a bit of a role model, hopefully, for other people. So then let's start the walk. The thing that I like about standards, and Nadine also said that, is that you get to work with people and you get to work with all different kinds of people. And I think in this world, you sometimes get people who are really tech savvy and you get people who are really people savvy. But if you are tech savvy and people savvy, I believe you're you have a special niche that you can work on. And I think standards and standardization is then something where one can use these skills very appropriately. So I am mostly involved in addressing standards. And what I like about addresses also that they are so diverse. They are different in different countries. You have to consider different languages. They have so many different users. There are so many stakeholders and organizations involved. So it's a very diverse environment, and it's not something where you get boxed into, for example, a specific discipline like chemistry, what we find otherwise at the university. But when you start this walk, it's a challenge because you don't know into which direction to go. There are so many options, so many roads, so many things that others have done in terms of addressing standards. So one lesson I have learned, and I think this is also where the other colleagues and your network help, is to consult. And so this is what we started doing in 2008. We looked at, we invited everybody from different countries to present to us how addresses work in their country, what address standards they have, what the challenges are. And so this was kind of the first milestone that we ever came in the long walk to an international standard on addressing. And we put this into a review summary, and that review summary then kind of compartmentalized the different standards and standardization requirements in terms of addressing so that we could start developing them. So now we had a plan, we had some direction, The ISO process, which many of you know, gave us some more direction. It's a rather complex process though, and there were a lot of additional milestones on this. So here again, it feels like a very long and winding road. So you can see that the target is coming closer, but it's still a lot of curves along the road to get there. And in the old world, we actually physically traveled around to different places. These were just the ISO meetings that I had to attend for the first part of the addressing standard. But also in those days already, we did a lot of online meetings. So initially everything was in WebEx, then we moved over to Zoom. But there also, this is something I appreciated in terms of standardization, and also in my work at the university and other organizations like OSGeo where I was involved, is the fact that you have the freedom to arrange your time, and you have the freedom to interact with people remotely in different parts of the world, with experts in different parts of the world. So that's really a privilege. And the big privilege about this is that you can do it while at the same time making sure that your kids get breakfast, that they get to school, that you drive them around, that they get to the activities in the afternoon. So that's something that I really enjoyed about this involvement in standards, is that I could at the same time spend time and look after my children. But just when you think you're getting over all those milestones, the road is really rough ahead. You can see the milestone is coming closer. But there are many challenges. So I always feel very sorry for somebody who has to write a standard for the first time. There are so many rules about how to write things. There are words like shall and should that have a very special meaning. There are other standards to consider. There are technical things that you have to learn. In ISO, we have the single harmonized model, so you have to know how to put things into there. And there, I think also, this is what Karen also talked about, the standardization environment. So you arrive there, everybody knows how things work, but unless you have somebody who helps you to understand how it is, or for example, the best practices that we have these days on the ISO TC211 website, you feel like you're the only outsider who doesn't know how things work. So making that process accessible to people, I think, is equally important. And then the other important lessons I have learned, when you get to these challenges where people are different, they have different opinions, it's important to focus on the things that unite us. What is the problem that we're trying to solve? So you can look at addressing all over the world. It's very different in different parts of the world. There are different reasons why they want addresses, but you can always find that one unifying element or goal in terms of interoperability. And if you identify that, then other people are amenable to compromising and aligning to that. And then I think you can find solutions. So this is what we eventually then also got to a solution that was the first part of the addressing standard. So you get consensus, the standard gets displayed on the ISO website, and you kind of get to the end of the road. And suddenly the road appears to be very smooth again. Along this road, one has made a lot of friends. It's been fun. I think it's really important. The message is also in the chat earlier, that one realizes that it's your attitude and it's your choice how you get involved in what kind of things, and that you should get involved in the things that are fun, and that you also make friends along the way. But one of the most important things I learned on this long walk to an international standard was patience. Things take time. That's just the way it is. And I think the same it is with other kind of, with transformation goals in terms of gender. If I just look at our university since I joined there in 2006, at that stage, it was very much still a white male environment. In these past 15 years, things have changed a lot, but they're still not there where we want them to be. So it really takes long to get through this transformation. And also for standards, it really takes long. The one thing, the standardization process takes a long time. Then the implementation of the standards also take time. And I very distinctly remember in 2008, sitting in Christiania in Copenhagen, Denmark, around a wooden table together with Martin Lind from Denmark and Anthony Cooper from South Africa, who I see is here today. and getting very irritated with them, explaining to me all the things that we had to consider and all the steps we had to go through. I was like, I just want to get the standard out and then get on with my life. But here I am 15 years later, still involved in standards and still involved in addressing standards. So is it worth it? There are some, for the standards, there are some short-term benefits, there are some longer-term benefits, and I think they are essential. We can't live in this complex technical world today without standards. And I think also for somebody involved in the standardization process, to me, it's not only about the technical output that you get, but it's also about the people that you meet, the differences that you can make, the engagement with other countries, and there's also bringing that information and that knowledge back to your own country and trying also to get local people involved in international standardization. So thank you very much again for this celebration, Agneta, for organizing that. I think it is a very special event, yeah, I hope the others enjoyed it as well.
I sure think so. Looking at the chat also, there are lots of positive comments to you, Serena. No, I don't see a particular question, but mostly encouraging words. Thank you, Serena. And I love to see this. I love your slides about first thinking about the smooth highway and then all the bumps and rocky roads. But suddenly, eventually we have the standards and you still keep going. Wow. So thanks for taking us on this exciting journey. This basically leads us to the end of the meeting, as I see no particular questions. Yeah. So thank you again, Serena, and Christine, could you please just turn over to the last slide? We have one or 2 minutes. Actually, I did this before the meeting based on what I heard and saw from the presentations, but I think to say something more about the summary here, I think we have heard so much about the importance of your own driving force, your own owning your own choices and being aware of that, and the passion. Be passionate about what you're doing. It's really important. But also we've heard a lot about role models and superheroes. We've heard from the beginning from Nadine saying that, I mean, there are some great leaders among women, and it's also, I would like to come back to actually the second point here. I think it's really important that why shouldn't it be a representation in standardization concerning the participation as it is in most other areas? The benefit would be so much in the processes, in the way of thinking. Serena also talking about the technical side versus the personal side, and to mix this is also very fruitful, I think. So yeah, I'll stop there. Make friends, have fun, and thank you the presenters for being so passionate and being such good ambassadors. And I hope that we have contributed to being as a collective group of women here today, being help to be a role model and telling about this exciting area of standardization, because it's not about the standards itself, it's the use of the standards, like you very made a very visual presentation of it earlier, Nadine. So and the last slide then, that's the closing time. So thank you to all the speakers and also to SIS, as I've already, I hope I mentioned, Christine, for the support of setting up this session, and also for the audience of your attention. The presentation and the recording will be made available somehow. And please keep yourself updated then on the websites that we have from OGC and ISO TC211. Thank you.